And I'm going to add in total 3 students so that we can show you a few different examples in the marking stage of the system. Okay. Now, as I said, the next step here is to give us all those contact details. I didn't have an email address for all those students. Do not add your own email address, teacher. So if you have a whole class of 20 students, don't put your email address for every student, because what will happen, the system automatically generates an email to you asking you to log in as that student and complete your address and telephone number details. So if you don't have the email address, leave it blank. If you do, it'll make the system much faster and efficient for you. But you can go over to modify student details. And in there, I can select my student and it'll have the list of all of my students. A student may move or they may change their date of birth. I don't know how they do that, but they might move. And so you can change those details. So I'll go to one of the students and I just hit search and it gives me all their details, and I need to add, as I said, a requirement is their address and their telephone number. Okay, and then I click change and those details have been successfully added. Okay, so either student name, date of birth and email address, and let the student complete their address and telephone number, or we go into the modify student details and add those details. As I said, we can't issue a certificate, and this is under requirements of the national training packages, without having those details, because they have to be cross-referenced for future records, which we need to hold for 30 years. Okay, so we've added all our students, we've modified any student details, and you can go back and do that later. You could add your students and start marking them, and then come back into the system another day once you've got the records from your school to add the student details. Okay, but don't request certificates until you've done that. Okay, so we've enrolled our students. We're now going to go to marking. Once again, if you've got more than one class set up, if the vet coordinator, for instance, in your school is organising the system and enrolling students, the teacher then can select the class, and we hit select, and magically, all the students, and I said I was going to enter 3, but I've only entered 2, which is not good. But anyway, that'll be all right. All of your students will appear on the one page, and this is something that in the past teachers have said it would be fantastic if we see a whole list of all our students, all the units that they're in, on one page. So that's why we've done it in this way. You'll see it's got the student ID, their name, if a certificate's been requested, which it hasn't yet because we haven't marked them, and a list of all the units. You have to update each student individually, but it's a fairly straightforward process. So I can mark as I go along in the year, or because it's towards the end of the year, we can mark all of the students at once. So my first student, I'm going to mark as competent in every unit. Competent is obviously designated by a C, and not competent or not yet competent or competency not assessed can simply be an N. That means they haven't completed the unit, or maybe they didn't achieve the requirements of the unit. Okay? So, you can see here, I'm going to click C. To move to the next unit, we use the tab. We tab to the next unit, and I'm going to tab along and add C to all of these units for this student. You'll see that then at the end there, I need to click Submit. And it will say that that student's details have been successfully updated. Then I'll move on to the next student. Do not add all the C's or all the N's and then go through and hit the submits, because when you hit submit in one student, it'll clear all the fields for the students below. Okay? You got that? Right. So, then I'll move on to my next student. And this student was quite good, but just didn't finish a couple of units. So I'm going to add some N's for those units and C's for those. Then once again, I go to the end and click submit for that student, and you'll see that that student has been successfully updated. So you can see which ones are there. If that student then, here's a unit that I missed, completes a unit, we can add it, which that unit is now competent, and hit submit, and you'll see that those details are there, and now my students have been graded for every unit, or marked for every unit. Okay. If this student now suddenly, in the last minute, finishes or demonstrates competency, I can go into that field and change it to C, and once again, go to the student and click submit. You'll see that the whole student highlights, so you know which one you're doing, and you'll see that that unit has been updated with now to be C. It's important that you use C or N because it tells the system what it hasn't completed. After I've marked all my students for the year, or at the end of a 2-year program at the end of the course, or if a student leaves and you need to request a certificate or a statement of attainment, we go to request certificate. Complex, I know. At this point, there's a privacy statement which talks about the ATQF requirements and lists 4 key things that, as the delivering site or school, you need to be aware of. They are things that you should be aware of. If you have any questions, please give us a call here at Ausmusic. But otherwise, click I agree if you agree to those statements, or I disagree if you disagree. It talks about just the teachers having the appropriate qualifications and following the requirements of the ATQF 2007 standards. So I'm going to click that I agree, and that I need to go to my class. If I select the wrong class, I'll see the wrong students, and I click select. It's now going to bring me up a whole list of all my students, and I've got 2 students in this class, and I can request a certificate or a statement. A certificate is for a student that has completed every unit and has competency in every single unit that you have added to your class. Okay, so if they're partway through the course, you won't be able to get a certificate. If you make a mistake, and I'll do that now, so I'm going to request a certificate for my first student, who I know completed everything, and I'm also going to request a certificate for my second student. Now, a message comes up saying, this student has not completed all of the units, and I can only request a statement of attainment, which I did know that. So we'll go back, and I will request a statement, hit submit, and you'll now see that in my list of students, I can clearly see I've requested a certificate and requested a statement, which is fantastic. Then I may have another 10 students in the class that haven't finished yet, and I'm giving them a little bit more time, and so I don't want to request that certificate yet. Or a student leaves, and so I need to request a certificate now. Once that happens, we get notified at Ausmusic that certificate and statement requests have been asked for. We then create and issue those certificates and statements, and we send those to your school. We send them to the place that's delivering the course to distribute them to the students. We do not send those documents to each individual student. That's something important to note. If I go back into marking now and select my class, what you'll see is that I've got all my units here, and it has certificate request, and it says a certificate has been requested. So it'll tell you that when you go back into mark. And it says here that a statement has been requested. This student may then complete those units down the track, and I can update that. I can make those now all C's, and if I do make them all C's and hit submit, you'll see that now it's not requested. I can go into request certificate. Once again, I agree to those statements, go to my class list, and I can once again request a certificate or a statement. A statement of attainment is for a student that hasn't completed a full course. Okay, it's just some units that they've completed, and a certificate is obviously for the full course. That's now been updated, so that student could now receive a certificate. That's about it. If you have any further questions, there is a help and support section in the website where it's got email address contacts. If it's a technical question, there's a technical support email there, and also the user manual, which you can download and read through all of the steps as we've discussed them. Just remember, create the class first, add the electives to your class, then enroll your students, and you're set up, and away you go. If you have any questions, contact us here at Ausmusic on 1300 Ausmusic, and we'll be more than happy to point you in the right direction. Thanks a lot.